the person that we are and how we see ourselves, it absorbs that. It absorbs that negativity and that stuff. And it begins to be more of how we see ourselves rather than seeing ourselves as an improving, growing, maturing person who has learned from things and doesn't get all upset about the things we used to.
Well, welcome to What to Say and How to Say It. Today's episode is all about 5 signs that you are a high-functioning nervaholic. Now, that sounds terrifying, but it's more common than you're probably aware. And once again, we have the pleasure of being with our favorite counselor, Kyle Hargrove. He's a licensed professional counselor, and he understands about anxiety because he works with people that suffer from this, that deal with it or don't deal with it. So that's part of his job, is helping them figure it out. Kyle, why is this so important?
The reason this is so important is because we kind of got to face the music when it comes to how anxious we are. And the level of anxiety in our country and probably the rest of the world has just shot off the charts, probably most specifically in the last 2.5 to 3 years. I don't know if you can even imagine, thinking about our kids, junior high and high school kids, and even college kids, and where the things that are causing them the most anxiety are not, is that a zit? Oh my God. or is anyone going to invite me to the dance? Or, did I get the right outfit for the prom? Or, whatever it might be, the things you would expect to be stressing out kids and even young adults. But now it's things like politics and terrorism and crime and racial issues. And that big umbrella that covers all of that. We just had a pandemic, and that's the first time in any of our lives we'd seen anything like that. So when you take all of the effect of the last couple of years and of the pandemic and the work-related changes and the not being in contact with people, and we already had a society that was really struggling with the overstimulation of media and screens and things like that, and we put that into hyperdrive. So I started thinking about some ways to say to kind of put in a box, not stuff you in a box, but to put a box around this and say, what are some of the things that are going to cause people to realize that they are over anxious, that they're still high functioning. And I wanted to use the word anxiety or anxious, but anxiaholic didn't really sound right. So being nervous is probably one of the closest things to it. So nervaholic did sound like it fit anyway, because I started with, a high functioning basket case. No, that's or a high functioning hot mess or a dumpster fire or even a train wreck. None of those, those are kind of impersonal. So nervaholic is what I came down on. And I think as we walk through this today, I think that a lot of people, if a lot of people watch our podcast, if it's only a few people, then I think a few people are going to recognize I am walking in nervousness and anxiety in ways that I've become so accustomed to it. It's almost like my friend. And what would I do without it?
Yeah. Like we almost get addicted to the way we are now. And everything has changed so much in the last couple of years that, we've sunk into that space. And some of us don't even know that we're walking on eggshells. And I just want to take a second and remind people, if you want a little booklet on how to stop walking on eggshells, you can go over to greaterimpact.org and grab that. It's got some great information for you about that. Kind of ties into our topic, though. There are people today that are more nervous and more anxious than we've ever been historically. I look at my own, one of my children, he's not a child. Well, none of my kids are. They're all these young adults, right? He'll be 24. He's been an EMT. He watched 5 of his friends die of COVID. And then he's watched, I don't even know how many people die of COVID. They'd go out and get these people, bring them back, and they wouldn't make it, like time and time again. And he sat with one of them whose family just refused to go in, and was like, yeah, he's a goner, we'll see you. And he was suited up in PPE, and he sits with this man because he didn't want him to die alone. And I'm sitting there thinking, this sounds so World War II, man. That movie, that They Shall Not Grow Old, the gut-wrenching things that those 19, 20-year-old men, boys went through. We haven't had anything like that. And so we're not used to that. But I look at the level of anxiety and the tension. Every person I know that's a therapist, a counselor, a coach is seeing a huge increase because people need help and they're hurting and they don't know what to do with it. And I think you're onto something, because this anxiety is what's undergirding everything, making it worse.
Yeah.
So what do we do? Where do we start?
Well, there was an old commercial for drug and alcohol treatment center back 20, 30 years ago. And they say the first step to getting help is admitting you have a problem. And if we're going to admit we have a problem, we've got to see what that problem consists of. Mm-hmm. We've got told, okay, here are some things that would tell you, you're dealing with a little more than I think God ever intended us to deal with. We're carrying burdens that are heavier than he ever expected us to, mm-hmm. or wanted us to. And
so what would that first sign be then that you have for us?
Well, the first sign is that, you could be the life of the party. You can be a person that everybody likes and people love having you around, but you might be in that category of a high functioning nervaholic if the reason they like having you around is because you spend too much of your time and your energy people pleasing. And I think I have thrown out your way one day, just when we were talking about ideas for our podcast, that how exhausting it is to be a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually exhausting. I mean, the fatigue is untenable, and it's not sustainable either. And that's one of the big problems about carrying anxiety around and walking around as a high functioning or even a low functioning anxious person is it's not sustainable. We were not created to be this way.
Yeah. Well, and the energy, you make a good point about the energy that you wrap up with people pleasing. I'm betraying myself multiple times over and over again when I try to please somebody else, which then lowers my sense of identity, which then makes it even easier for me to betray myself more quickly. I guess it's a horrible spiral that people get caught in, like a whirlpool that just ends in this, you're drowning. That's it right there. It's overwhelming.
It is. And you just give and give and give more and more and more of yourself until there's no more of you to give. Mm-hmm. And then there's kind of a crash, and that crash is usually kind of ugly. I'll give you an example. We sometimes go through our things and say, we're trying to get into a mode of saying, if we don't touch something or use it in a year, get rid of it.
Sure.
Taking up space. We need that space for other things. And somebody wants to build a wood shop. I don't know who that is. But we need that space. But so we frequently will put items for sale on the marketplace. Okay, on the online, on the Facebook. Mm-hmm. And we both Danny and I noticed that, people will wear you out over a $10 item or a $20 item. That is it still available? Do you still have it? Are other people looking at it? Would you sell it for $4? Okay, well, I'll come by at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So you rearrange your schedule on Saturday morning to be there when they come by, and they don't show.
Yeah.
And you start, say, okay, I will accommodate you. I've accommodated. And finally you get to a point where you say, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
So I put some things on Facebook day before yesterday, some Pampered Chef stuff that, nice stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I will not meet you.
Get the boundaries.
I know what this stuff is worth. I'm not dumb. Blah, blah, blah. And so the first message I get back is, were you in a bad mood when you did that? And I started thinking, yeah, I probably was.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Let me just be real upfront with the rules around this interaction.
That's just a microcosmic look at what happens when we overgive, when we give too much of ourselves just to make sure that everybody else is happy.
Mhm.
And then suddenly we realize, well, I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm tired. I'm tired of, allowing people to step on me. But the only reason that they did is because I put myself out there to be stepped on.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense. I mean, people do that when they're in new circumstances. Like I'm sitting here listening, going, "Well, I might have done that." I've used Facebook Marketplace once, and I did the same thing. But no joke, man, that was a hot mess, and I would think about it differently if I did it again. Now I know how. Although I might be a little bit kinder in my wording. The customers are concerned. Are you angry? I'm the angry poster. You got what you wanted though, right? You sold your
I
stuff.
had to reply and say, yeah, I had to reply and say, yeah, well, feeling a little taken advantage of and disrespected. So I just needed to set my boundaries. I probably should have been a little bit nicer, but
no, I think
anyhow.
it's great that you did, right? Like at least they knew, here's your yes and here's your no. Yeah. That makes it easier for people and us, I think, if we're real clear, if we know what they are in the first place. So we got people pleasing. That's a sign. What else?
Yep. The second thing is going to be that you find yourself literally tormented by tiny, trivial little things that never even catch the eye of most people. But we get consumed by it, or we'll obsess on it, and we'll make ourselves upset. Some people make themselves physically ill because they get consumed and obsessed. I was talking with a client the other day who said, I don't know what got into me. I dropped my pen on the floor while I was working and spent the next 2 hours crying uncontrollably.
Wow.
And so the therapist, the first thing I have to say is, let's just be clear. You realize that wasn't about the pen.
Right. Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the pen. That had everything to do with emotions inside of you that have been begging to find some way to get out. And they found an opening. You probably said something negative about yourself when you dropped the pen. Gosh, how often do we do that? You klutz, or you dummy, or, something like that. But when we break down that barrier just a little bit, there they come.
Yeah. Yeah. If we hold it in too long, it's coming out.
Oh yeah. And that's what I say to people all the time. And I have to say to myself sometimes, when you're talking about any negative emotion, but specifically about anger, you will deal with it. It will deal with you.
Yeah.
It is a choice. And how many times have you heard people say, well, I can't help it. I can't help it that I'm so angry, or that I'm staying so angry, or whatever the case might be. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
It feels like you're giving something away, to not be angry anymore. But it's the only way to find your own personal, highest and best use in a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's mature into that space, right? Because who wants to stay a 2-year-old when you're 50? Stop that. Like grandkids and things looking at you, teach them better, and it's hard if you haven't dealt with it, no matter what age you are, but it's worth dealing with.
Yes. And it's a natural emotion. So one of the most difficult parts about a scenario like that is helping people understand that it's okay. And it's actually a good thing to lean into that emotion and understand why it's there. It's terrifying at times. People spent their entire lives being anxious or angry or disappointed or frustrated or jealous or, any of those negative things. They spent decades and decades being that way. And they never allowed themselves to lean into what that is actually all about, and to allow themselves to feel it to the fullest extent, so that they could say, I might be better off not going back there again. I might enjoy my life a lot more, and it'd be a lot more satisfying and fulfilling if I really got to understand this emotion and have it, stopped having it direct me and let me decide.
Well, and to your point, you have to lean into it. What you resist dealing with persists. So if you choose to ignore it or swipe it under the rug or whatever, it is not gone, and it will come out.
Correct.
Sideways on your people or yourself or your dog. Somewhere it'll come out. So good advice.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so that's two of them. What's the next one?
The third one is that you become obsessed, literally obsessed by every mistake you make. And you are endlessly rebuking yourself
Mm,
for making mistakes. Somewhere, somehow, we forgot that we're part of that human race, which instantly means we're flawed,
mhm,
which instantly means we're going to make errors in judgment. We're going to make errors because we didn't know any better. And sometimes we're going to make errors that we know full well we're making.
mhm.
But when we make mistakes, uh, figuring out what there is to learn about them and how to get past it and not make that mistake again is like the furthest thing from our mind. But calling ourselves foul names and treating ourselves badly and literally internally punishing ourselves, sometimes externally,
Mhm.
punishing ourselves because we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm a classic negative self-talk person. I call myself names, some of which I won't repeat here. But I'm constantly expecting more of myself. I'm blind in one eye. And so working with small parts and pieces and little screws and washers and things is frequently frustrating for me because my depth perception is skewed desperately.
Mhm.
I will reach for something and instead of grabbing it, I knock it off,
Mm.
knock it out of the way. Or, when I'm trying to put something down in a tight little place, I miss or something like that and everything falls apart. So I'm constantly at myself, even though there's a valid reason for that. Okay, I am clumsy as well. Okay, but I have another reason that I struggle with that, and I can't seem to give myself a break.
Mm.
I have to work on that really hard because our the person that we are and how we see ourselves, it absorbs that.
Mhm.
It absorbs that negativity and that stuff, and it begins to be more of how we see ourselves rather than seeing ourselves as an improving, growing, maturing person who has learned from things and doesn't get all upset about the things we used to.
Mhm. Well, and I think there's something to be said about our human nature being moldable and growth oriented as well, if we're aware of this stuff. Like one of the things I like about you is that even though you have that going on, you're still building stuff. You're still choosing to pursue stuff you love doing, even though it's a challenge for you. A lot of people would just give up, but that's not you, you know? And so, and probably helps that you're a therapist because, that's probably why those other people give up is they don't have, the background in counseling and they, don't understand. So we allow ourselves to be tricked by our own minds when we don't choose to tame the thoughts and take them captive. And it can be, especially in places where we're triggered or wounded, where that comes from. It can be a real fight, but it's worth having because otherwise you won't do the things that you want to do with your life. So at the same time as you're being all humble and all that, which is awesome, because we all do what you just described. I just got to point out that you also rise above it. So props on that. So we got 3 of these things.
Thank you. I would not do 25 hours of therapy a week if there weren't some benefit for me in it. Okay. So, get that out.
That's funny. Well, yeah, I get that. Yeah. So we went through 3 of them. Yeah, you got 2 more left. What are our other 2 signs?
So you got skills. Okay, you got game, but you lack the confidence to put yourself into it.
Mm.
You're capable of some things, but you're afraid to step into things that could potentially help your confidence and your maturity grow because you're afraid you may fail.
Mm.
And and instead of acknowledging the reality that sometimes you will,
mm-hmm.
Sometimes we will fail, sometimes we will try and fail, sometimes we'll fail because we never did it. And that, when we wanted to and we had the skill to do it, the capability to do it, but we just never did it. We just have this emptiness, regrets. People always talk about not wanting to die with regrets. Well, then for crying out loud, why don't we get in the game?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so thankful. The Lord's done such a huge work in my life in this space. I think I still call myself a reformed perfectionist because that wiring was in there early. But in elementary and junior high, I would practice my flute, but I wouldn't actually blow noise across it. I could tell, I would put enough air across it. I could tell if I was hitting the note, in the right place and whatever, but I wouldn't let anybody hear me until I nailed the song. And then I would practice aloud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing with tennis and, any of the sports that I did. I didn't want anybody to see me actually do anything until I was actually good at it, which is such a different place than where I'm at now, which is like, oh, I don't have to be good at everything. Matter of fact, I'm really lousy at a number of things that I really enjoy doing. And I don't care if I'm the best. I don't have to be. Like I ride horses and I would lose everything I ever entered. I mean, I won a thing once, but I took third. And that was mostly because there was an age group thing. It was one of those deals. There's so many better riders than me. I don't care. I love being with the horses, love doing all of that. But I've grown up a lot in the last 45 years. So that's been useful. So, and I'm way over 45. So
we get so competitive about everything.
Yeah.
It seems. Get competitive. We say we have to be the best or we have to win. And why can't we just feel joy in participating in something we enjoy?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to feel like, it's got to be as good as somebody else or it's got to be the best? And I think one of the most exhausting things that, other than people pleasing that we do to ourselves is this comparison game.
Yeah.
We compare, well, I got to do it or I got to have something that's as good as, if not better than my neighbor or my friend or whatever. Mm-hmm. I can't just, I'm using a set of 25-year-old golf clubs, maybe 20 years old. I don't know how old they are. And I want some new ones. I would really like to have some new golf clubs. But you know what? They're expensive.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Expensive. And I'm not going to spend that kind of money. I'm not going to spend $1,500 on a new set of golf clubs. I'm getting older, not younger. I'm getting not as good, not better, probably. So there's no point in doing that. If I ever get a new set of golf clubs, it's because someone's going to buy them for me.
Okay. Nice wink there, Kyle. Yeah.
If anybody's watching. We just have this idea that we've got to keep up. It's always been called keeping up with the Joneses or whatever the case might be. It's exhausting. It takes so much from us, and we overspend. We ignore things that we need to be spending time with and doing, and sometimes we ignore family members. And why can't we just enjoy the simple things of life and enjoy taking part and being a part, doing our best, and letting it lie right there?
Mm-hmm. No, that's legit. My husband has this saying that is to compare is to despair. And I think that, that's a ticket right there to being disappointed, discouraged, all the D words, that are depression, all the pit words. And my dad used to tell me, he said, the world is a big place. There will always be somebody who's better at something than you and worse at it than you are. You need to compare you to you and see that you're still growing and developing your skills and stop worrying about where other people are at. It doesn't matter. It only matters to you where you are. And I thought that was so wise. And it took so much stress off of me to go, oh, I only have to compare myself to me. Interesting. So that means I'm free to learn from other people, but I don't have to feel pressure from that. I can just admire and respect, which is a much better emotion, because when you're competing, there's some underlying envy, jealous, negative, ugly thing to that. There can be, but when you're admiring something, that's a comparison that is not even comparison. I think it's just respect of something. So, So did we hit them all?
Let me finish. One more.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I read in a journal, that a lot of this anxiety is coming from the over-identification and overthinking, and that over-identification and overthinking leads to catastrophizing. And I'm going, whoa, those are big words.
Yes.
I decided to rewrite this one, in my own words. And it's, in most situations, you get too thinky, and that leads to awfulizing every time. Okay. Because we get too thinky, we overthink, we think about something, we kill it to death if you can do that by thinking about it over and over and over. But our minds immediately go to the worst possible scenario, a worst case in possibilities. And then we worry and we're anxious and we don't eat and we don't sleep and we this and we that. And then it doesn't even happen.
Right.
Or when it does happen, it's like, okay, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Well, why did you think it was going to be that way? Because you had built it up to be something that it's not. Or I had, or some, we all do that sometimes. But people who overthink, I don't think I'm capable of overthinking, because that means you have to think, and thinking makes my head hurt. So,
the guy that's smart. Sure.
I worry about other things, but overthinking things it's like it's become a sport or something. I don't know. It seems like everybody's taking part in it at a level we've never seen before. I think we're terrified by a lot of the things that have gone on and are going on in the world, and that's why we do it.
Yeah. No, that's legitimate. There's so much worry and stress, and we're told in the Bible not to do that. Right.
Yep.
But when we're doing all of these things, it's all communication we're having with ourselves. So if we were to look at the what to say and how to say it thing, well, stop. I mean, the first thing, stop doing that stuff. Cut it off. I remember this is a long time ago, back in the 1980s, Nightingale Contact Corporation out of Chicago did a study, and they found that 80% of the things that we worry about never happen. And I was still in high school in the early 80s. Yeah. And for me, that was life-changing, because I went, 80% of the stuff that I worry about never happens. Well, I'm wasting a whole lot of time and energy. I don't like how I felt when I didn't like how I felt when I was worrying. That, it's a physical thing. Why am I doing this when it's wasted energy? So knowing that, and I don't have a recent statistic. I don't care, because all I know is I haven't been a worrier really for, that many years, which is like 30 some plus years. That's a long time to not do a thing, and I do worry sometimes, like the first time I got pregnant and second and third times I got pregnant, you worry a little bit more and different, but until you don't, right? Yeah. You get into a space where you have confidence.
We worry about the things we can't control. Yeah, we worry about things we can't control. If we can control it, we do.
Right.
Everything else goes into the worry bucket. Okay. And so, and we feel we feel very powerless, when we're anxious about things going on around us that are out of control. Well, there are always things out there going on that are out of control. So are we going to choose just to worry all the time and feel powerless? Or are we going to take our power from the only place we can? And that is how we respond to those things that are outside of our control. How am I going to respond to a situation that I can't change? It's got nothing to do with me. Maybe I should just forget about it. But if it's got something to do with me and it affects me, then I've got to start thinking about how I'm going to respond to this, since I know I can't change it. I can't control it. Do I want to go off? Do I want to act like a fool? Do I want to get in somebody's grill? What is it that I'm going to do? Or am I going to think thoughtfully and carefully through this and say, okay, I can't change this. This has happened. I can't go back and make it unhappen. How do I respond to it so that I'm okay with me, and that I'm not, I don't look like a complete goober. That's another clinical term.
Yeah, you have a few of those today. That's funny.
So anyway, overthinking does not typically lead to good places. This is not how scientific discoveries are made.
No.
Thinking more and overthinking.
Yeah.
So we should give ourselves a break.
Yeah. Dish some grace to ourselves. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you find yourself identifying with any of these 5 signs that you might be a high functioning nervaholic, you might want to check out one of our other episodes where we help you figure out, how do I stop being like this? What should I be saying? And how do I say that to myself? And how do I do this with God? Because you're not alone in this journey. There's lots of people with you. So feel free to just check out one of the other episodes that's coming up next. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by.
Awesome.